The following program will make you want to grow things and experience new and wonderful dreams about your plants, garden, and garden design. Listener participation is always strongly advised. Good evening and welcome to Down the Garden Path with your hosts Joanne Shaw and Matthew Dressing, right here on Reality Radio 101. To get on board, send us an email right now. Our email address is instudio101@gmail.com. And now, right to your hosts of Down the Garden Path, Joanne Shaw and Matthew Dressing.
Thank you, and welcome everyone to Down the Garden Path, where we discuss down-to-earth tips and advice for your plants, gardens, and landscapes. As landscape designers and gardeners, we think it is important and possible to have great gardens that are low maintenance, and we want to help you make it happen. I am Joanne Shaw, landscape designer and owner of Down to Earth Landscape Design. I've been designing beautiful gardens for homeowners east of Toronto for over a decade. With me is my co-host Matthew Dressing. Welcome, Matthew.
Welcome, Joanne. Good evening, everybody. I am Matthew Dressing, horticulturist and landscape designer, and owner of Natural Affinity Designs. Natural Affinity is a landscape design and garden maintenance firm servicing Toronto and the Eastern GTA. Joanne and I enjoy hosting Down the Garden Path each week, bringing you interesting, relevant, and helpful topics to help you achieve a great garden. We learn right along with you from each other, from our research, and from the guests that join us here on the show. As always, we welcome your questions via social media and email.
That's right, and so we want to thank you for joining us on this live version of Down the Garden Path. And you can always check out past shows of Down the Garden Path on your favorite podcast app, as we'll be releasing each of the live shows as a podcast. While you're there, don't forget to subscribe to be notified of new content, and please like, share, and leave us a comment.
That's right. And if you've been following along all month, you'll know it's the last Monday in the month of March. I can't believe it. Where has all of March gone? Right? But we've been talking all about growing. So we like to grow plants in many different places besides the ground. So this month we've been talking about what it takes to get growing in different places. From starting seeds indoors to raised beds and containers, the possibilities are endless. And as we round out this month's discussion, tonight we're joined by Janet Tuenschel, owner of Country Cut Flowers, as we're going to discuss growing cut flowers. Want to join the conversation? Perhaps you have a cut flower question, or you'd like to ask Janet about growing flowers, cut flowers. You can write us here at instudio101@gmail.com.
That's right, and we want to welcome Janet to the show. Janet, I'll tell you a little bit about her. She has a little flower farm just outside Newmarket, Ontario, just north of where Matthew and I are. And it's called Country Cut Flowers. Her farm is heading into its third year of opening to the public for Cut Your Own Flower Days, workshops, and small weddings. The rolling hills at Country Cut Flowers have approximately 1,000 peonies, 6,000 tulips, and an acre of mixed perennials and annuals. Janet left advertising and fundraising worlds to get her hands in the dirt, first with a small gardening business, then with this flower farm. Welcome to the show, Janet.
Oh, thank you, Joanne. Thank you, Joanne and Matthew, for including me this evening.
Well, thank you very much for joining us here down the garden path. We're really looking forward to talking about Country Cut Flower Farm and hearing about your story and talking all about growing some cut flowers. So why don't we start off talking about cut flowers and growing cut flowers. If our listeners wanted to start their own garden of cut flowers, what are some of the easiest cut flower varieties that maybe they could be starting from seed right now before the season really gets started?
Right. I would say a couple of the easiest ones are zinnias and cosmos. Really easy. They can get them going indoors now. It's quite a perfect time to get them started because they need to be planted indoors 4 to 6 weeks before the last frost date where your listeners are located. What's also nice about zinnias and cosmos is if people don't want to start them ahead of time, they can wait until that last frost date and plant them out directly. It just gives them a little head start if they want to start them now. Yeah. Another really, really easy one is sunflowers. You can start that one indoors ahead of time, but once again, it's another one that's really easy to just plant directly in your garden.
So sunflowers, do you start your sunflowers direct or do you start them indoors?
I start them direct in the ground. I know a lot of flower farmers do start them ahead of time and plant them as little plugs when the frost is gone. I find that I run out of space indoors for one thing, so
Yes.
I don't have room for all the trays of plants, and they start so easily outdoors that I just feel like I'm wasting my time to start them indoors and plant them out. It's an extra step that I don't need, and because what I have is a cut your own flower operation, I find if the sunflowers bloom too early, people aren't that interested. They tend to think of them as a late summer flower. Maybe they start putting them in their fall bouquets. So if they're blooming really early in my field, I find people don't very often cut them.
Oh, okay. That makes sense. So with when you said about the zinnias and the cosmos, the fact that you can start them inside and outside, could people do both and kind of extend? Does that kind of work at extending the season maybe? Like the ones you start inside might bloom a little earlier than the ones you start outside?
Yeah, exactly. So they probably wouldn't bloom 4 to 6 weeks earlier, but they would bloom a couple of weeks earlier. So yeah, it would extend your season. And what's nice about zinnias is you can keep cutting them throughout the summer, make your bouquets, and it just makes the stalks produce more flowers. So it's actually good to cut them, and it just keeps the plants going throughout the season.
Really? See, I didn't know that. I thought that once you cut them, that they were done.
No, there are some flowers like that, but zinnias are great. They cut and they come back. Yeah,
okay, almost like perennials, because that's often the case with some, like the salvias, and where you can cut them and they keep coming back. So that is great to know.
Yeah, it's a very versatile cut flower. I would definitely start with zinnias, and they're easy. Like if you have a little space, like if you have a new garden, although you're both designers, so you may object to this, but if there's a little space in the garden when you've got new shrubs that maybe aren't that big, I would just sprinkle them down in the ground with a little bit of compost and water, and they're good to go.
Oh, there you go, listeners. So there's a good little tip. So Janet, what would you say? So we've covered a couple of the easy ones. What are ones that might be a little bit more challenging, but they're definitely worth the effort?
Okay.
Put you on the spot here. Sorry.
I would say, because there are some really tricky ones, and I will admit, because like I mentioned, I do run out of space for starting all my seedlings. Lysianthus is a beautiful cut flower. It looks like a rosebud, and it lasts easily for 10 to 14 days when you cut it in a bouquet. So there are lots of people who do start them in their own homes, but they are a little trickier. They take a long time to start. They take a lot of heat and humidity. So if you're prepared for that, they do make a stellar cut flower.
Okay. Well, we're with you. We're all about low maintenance and easy going here on down the garden path, right, Matthew? So we can appreciate that you're choosing the ones that are easier. But Lysianthus, that's interesting. So for someone who might want the challenge, right?
Exactly. And a lot of people are very successful with them, but you just have to be very patient, know that they take their time, they grow very slowly. So anyone wanting to grow them for this season, it would be too late. You'd have to start them in January. So it's one to put on the list for next year.
Okay, excellent. Well, that is good to know.
Yeah.
Janet, do you have any favorites that you have more success with, like you have good success with your sunflowers right outside? What are some of the other ones that you grow at Country Cut Farm that you start right outside?
Yeah, well, I would also, there's some that I'm planting outside right now because they can take the cold. So it's actually really good for them to go out right now. So I have a couple of varieties of Chinese forget-me-not, one in rose, one in blue. Borage is nice, a whole slew of bachelor buttons in a variety of colors. I will be starting out soon, maybe in a few weeks, still when it's cool, a few varieties of annual phloxes. They are beautiful flowers, and they're the same shape as you would see in perennial phlox, but you get a nice different variety in colors, like more caramel type colors. Also starting outside in the cool soil are some Ammi. They're a variety of Queen Anne's lace. So they come in a variety, they look a lot like Queen Anne's lace, but in different colors, different sizes. Yeah, so they're going out now too.
Excellent. Now, is there any... sorry, go ahead. How would she spell that one, the last one, Matt?
Yeah, what was that last one called again?
Ammi, Ammi.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was wondering, with the rain that we've had in the last, 4 or 5 days, is that trickier when you're doing the direct sowing outside? Because I'd be afraid that the seed would, be washed away, possibly.
I find they do hold on. I will usually plant them with a handful of compost. So just mix them in the compost and broadcast them. And that seems to hold them on. So as long as it's fairly flat ground, they do hold on. And they are a seed that can take the abuse of all the early rain and the cold weather.
Okay.
Yeah. And then, so then there are all kinds that we start when the weather gets warmer. So that would go directly outside. I like a few different kinds of marigolds. There are taller marigolds, and they're really bright and colorful in the bouquets. Like I said, the sunflowers, the zinnias, the cosmos are really popular. I will continue to plant some of those cold, hardy flowers again, so that there are different waves of them coming through.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. A really popular flower that it isn't from seed. Well, it can be planted from seed, but I plant them from tuber, are the dahlias. The dahlias are very popular. They're probably the most popular flower I plant.
Really? So that's interesting. Okay.
Yeah, so I do start some of them indoors in the winter just to get a little head start on the season. So I do have a few pots of dahlias. That's part of the reason why I run out of space in my house, because I have dahlias everywhere. So. But then I do save a lot of them and plant them out after the last frost. They take up a good portion of the field, probably about a quarter of the field.
Oh, okay. So then but that's a high maintenance one, because then you have to dig them up every fall, right? And clean them and cut. I don't think you cut them right away. You cut them mid-season, midwinter.
Yeah, so I do pick and choose. I don't necessarily dig them all up. I tag the ones that I do really like. And then you do dig them up after there's been a few rounds of frost. clean them off. They can take a bit of soil on them, and then I throw them in the cold storage room once they've dried out, because you don't want to throw them into storage too early or they will get a little moldy. And then it's in the winter, as I start taking them out, winter and early spring, that I'll start to divide them. There are different ways of doing that. I know other gardeners and flower farmers who divide all their tubers in the fall. I just feel like I run out of time.
Mm-hmm.
I prefer to throw them in I use my cold storage room, which is pretty good for storage. I do find one end of the cold storage room is a little drier, so sometimes the tubers dry out. The other end is a little damp, so sometimes they get moldy. So I don't have a perfect setting, and that's part of the reason why I don't go to all the effort of dividing them in the fall, because I know I will lose a certain portion of them.
Yeah. And I would think you'd running out of steam, too, in the fall, right?
Yes. Yes, definitely. Very tired by then.
Yeah.
But I do know people who have nice old farmhouses with basements that haven't been renovated. They have the perfect setting for storing dahlia tubers. So I know people do have really nice settings for them, but I think most of us our settings are a little iffy.
Yeah, I don't know that I could do it, because the garage. I mean, you can't really do it in a garage, right?
No, you can't. You can't let them freeze. They'll rot if they freeze. So yeah, it's just that cool, 2, 3, 4, 5 degrees, somewhere in there. They like a fair bit of humidity, but not too much. They are a little delicate and fussy. Most definitely. Yeah.
But it's worth it, because if that is the most popular flower, right?
Yeah, exactly. And every year I buy new tubers as well, because I like to try different varieties, and I know a certain portion of them won't make it through the winter, so to be on the safe side, I do always order more.
Nice. And what would you say your favorite dahlia variety is at the moment? If you have.
It is so hard to choose. But,
Right?
yeah, I'd say last year my favorite was Marn. It's that's spelled Maarn. It's an orange dahlia, and it lasted longer than some as a cut flower. It was really stunning, and it created a nice mass of flowers in the field.
Okay.
I mean, Cafe au lait is a classic, and I know people do sometimes get tired of that one, but it is hard to beat. Cafe au lait, especially when there's brides coming through wanting to get flowers for their weddings, or florists coming through to get those bridal flowers. Labyrinth is another favorite of mine. It's a deeper pink. It's got a little bit of peach in the petal as well. It is hard to choose. I swear, every time I'm asked what my favorite flower is, it changes.
Oh, that's allowed.
Yeah.
Well,
no, I think of dahlias as high maintenance, in that I've personally never grown them, but I hear about staking them and them being very fragile, and I'm all about what's easy and what's low maintenance, and I'm not good at babying anything. When you have that much of it, I mean, you obviously can't be out staking them.
No. You know what? I am a little hard on my dahlias. I'm not like some dahlia growers where they will tie up the entire row, because I do have the majority of my flowers are sold through cut your own flower days. So I can't have too many obstacles in the field. If I have ropes around things, or netting, I don't want anyone to trip and fall. So there is, I do admit, some of them flop. I will tie up individual plants if they are getting too floppy, because one of the things I find is my customers don't need really long stems on their flowers. They're generally putting flowers in a mason jar, so they don't need anything really, really tall. Whereas other growers might be growing them for florists, where they want really nice long stems so that they're versatile. They can use them in whatever floristry they're doing. So I am certainly not the fussiest when it comes to my dahlias.
Okay. Well, that's good to know. Do you have any?
Gonna,
So, if any of our listeners are thinking of starting maybe a small cut flower garden in their garden or in their yards, do you have some tips and tricks?
Yeah, I would make sure you use a lot of compost. Flowers tend to be big feeders, and there's an abundance of compost out there in the world, from your local garden center to your own compost in your own backyard. And when you're starting the flowers, make sure you water a lot. They can dry out very easily. I've lost a whole row before where I got busy with something else and I realized, oh my goodness, everything sprouted on that hot day and I missed that watering and every seed in that row died. So it is important in the beginning to water plenty. Like give them a little water in the morning. I'm not talking about like having the sprinkler going for 20 minutes, but just make sure they've got water to start the day. Maybe check them in the afternoon or evening to make sure they don't look too peaked. And that is probably, those are the two most important things. Lots of compost, make sure they've got lots to feed them, give them that initial water so they can get going. They won't need quite as much water as the season goes on. And some, like zinnias, will start to get mildewy if you do water them too much. And water them at the base of the plants rather than sprinkler as the season goes on.
Okay.
Yes. Excellent tip with watering at the base.
And I do find over time I've been adopting regenerative principles with my fields and gardens. So that's, I don't know if you guys have discussed this in other weeks, but it really involves disturbing the soil as little as possible so that you're not hurting all the fungus and all the critters living under the surface of the soil. Because any time we turn the soil over or we pull roots out of there, we're pulling up soil that's meant to be 2 or 3 or 4 inches below the surface, and those little critters die when they come to the surface. So what I'm doing now is just cut back what's maybe there from the year before without pulling it out if you can. I know sometimes annuals get really dry and they shrink and they do just fall out of the ground, but whatever you can leave there, and then even what you have pulled out or cut back, just chop it up into little pieces and create a mulch on the surface because it really protects the soil.
Right.
Wow.
And then even in your rows, if you are planting your cut flowers in rows, it's great to put something down as a cover crop between the rows so you don't have exposed soil. So even something like a white clover, it is perennial, so it would come back, but there are all kinds of annual clovers you can plant, and then it feeds the soil. It adds nitrogen to that soil, which is really important, but then covers the soil. It helps prevent weeds from coming up. It means you need less water in the soil too, because it really holds on to the water.
That is a great idea. So, yeah, it's almost like a living mulch.
It really is. And then you could, of course, use wood chips or something like that too. But anytime you can cover the soil and really protect it, it's just going to lead to healthier soil, which means better flowers.
Right. Very cool. We are definitely going to have to jump into that. I think, Joanne, you and I haven't maybe focused on it, but have talked about those kind of principles and some of those low maintenance and regenerative practices, but maybe not have called them that. I'm going to just jump in here, Janet. We have a couple questions from our listeners.
Okay.
Gloria writes in, hello, stay healthy, plant some flowers. My question for your guest. When you purchase any fresh cut flowers from wherever, they usually give you a packet of some white type crystal fertilizer to add to your vase. What exactly is that stuff, and is it necessary to use it? Thank you for doing the radio show tonight. It is a relief to us here holed up at home, Gloria.
Aw, that's very, very sweet. You know what? I do not know exactly what is in those packets. but I never use them. I think if you are getting your flowers fresh from your own garden or from a local grower, they are going to last. They don't need that food. If you do want to add a little bit of something in your water, you can do a sprinkle of sugar, like a tiny, tiny bit of white sugar and a tiny bit of bleach, but you must be really careful because it's very easy to put a little too much bleach. I actually shy away from that. I've even done just a splash of ginger ale, and that can really help feed the flowers. I find more than anything, get the freshest flowers possible. After a couple of days, change the water, and certainly if you see the water getting mucky before a couple of days, change it before then, and give all your stems a fresh cut. Those things will make your flowers last longer than those little packets.
Yeah, I think the fresh cut is really important. I think people forget how much, because they think it's not living anymore, that that it's not really drinking. But even tulips. Like I just threw some away today that have lasted. But I did forget to fill up the. I was throwing them away because they were really sad. But there was no more water in the vase, so I can't believe how fast and how much they drink. But that's why it's so important to kind of keep giving them a fresh cut.
Yes, most definitely, because the base of the plant gets clogged, so they can't even drink up the fresh water anymore.
Yeah.
And
I agree. I think that chemical was meant when we were importing and flowers had kind of traveled a long ways and they needed a lot of vitamins to kind of get back to normal. Whereas if we, buy local flowers, and there is a whole movement on plant local, buy local, support your local flower farmers. And I think that's the extra bonus, is that you don't have to worry about stuff like that because the flowers are so fresh.
Yeah, exactly. Because you can easily get 1 to 2 weeks out of your flowers when they're freshly cut. And if I should mention too, if you're cutting them from your own garden, try and get them as early in the morning as possible because they've taken up moisture throughout the night. And another good time to cut is in the evening. So definitely the cooler times of day. And that will lead to your flowers lasting longer too.
Excellent tip. Okay.
Excellent tips. So we have another question. James writes in, "Hi, Joanne and Matt. Thanks for the show tonight. In brackets, much needed. Because of this virus, does your guest know when she may open up her business for the season? I know that might be too early, but just wondering."
It's so funny. Everybody's so happy we're doing the show, so they're not thinking about the virus. But then there's the very people that are out. People talk about the virus. But yes, you do have some uncertainty, don't you, Janet?
Yeah, and definitely, it's hard right now to have any conversation completely get away from the virus.
Right.
I do think it's all consuming at this point in our lives. So I have not checked with Agriculture Canada, but I know other growers who have, and what we're hearing so far is that because we fall under the umbrella of agriculture, we are deemed part of that essential service. Yeah, some people may argue that flowers may not count as an essential service, but it's probably too hard to slice and dice agriculture and say, no, you don't count, and somebody else does.
Yeah.
And part of it, too, is we're starting everything now. So if we couldn't get deliveries, we wouldn't be able to have our whole full season. If things are delayed by 2 months, we could potentially lose our whole season. So I think that's part of the reason why we're allowed to continue right now. So my hope is that I can open for Cut Your Own Tulips by the middle of May. What I do is I really control my numbers here because I had a little issue a couple of years ago with too many people showing up. So now we sell tickets ahead of time on Eventbrite. And because I can really control the numbers, I'm hoping that I can continue to sell tickets. I don't know if I'll be able to do it in May or not, but if I can, I think I'll just have half-hour slots, and I will only sell 2 or 3 tickets per slot, and then just, talk to everyone as they come in. Make sure you keep the 2 meters. I'll be around to kind of police it. I hate to use that word, but, I want to be careful and make sure everyone's safe. If I can't do that, I will probably flip into doing deliveries. I know other farmers who have really early flowers now who have grown them in their greenhouses, and they're doing all deliveries rather than any pickup on the farm. So if I can't open up in May, the second wave is June, and it would be probably the 3rd week in June once we have peonies. So fingers crossed that I can open up for Cut Your Own then. But once again, I'm going to be really strict about the numbers of tickets I sell, really control it, because I also like to make sure everyone has a really nice, peaceful experience when they're cutting flowers. I would never want the field filled with too many people. So I'll just be even more careful this year.
Yeah, for sure. Why don't we? Are there any other questions, Matt?
Well, I was going to say there is a question from Joe that just came in, and I think Joe's question is just going to segue into the business side of things, if that's where we're going to go with the conversation next.
Yeah, I thought so. I think so. Yeah. So why don't we? Because there's always lots more flower questions, but I'm sure our listeners want to know a little bit more about you, Janet, and how you run the farm. Because I think you've got a unique angle on how you do it too.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you know what? Just before we start, I'm just going to say, Joe, thank you for your question. Joe writes in, "Hello, just tuned in. Where is your guest shop, and does she have a web presence? And if she does, so we'll start with that. But just for those like Joe who are tuning in, thank you for tuning in this evening to Down the Garden Path here on Reality Radio 101. We're talking with Janet Tuenschel of Country Cut Farms. So she does her own cut flower business here just in Newmarket, just north of where we are here in the GTA. If you'd like to talk to Janet, Joe, maybe you have some questions specifically about her business or some cut flowers in general, you can reach us here down the Garden Path at instudio, that's instudio at gmail.com, and ask Janet a question.
And let me correct you on that. That's in studio 101. So it's in studio 101 at gmail.com.
Yes, it's in studio 101 at gmail.com. I don't know why I forgot the 101 that time. So
we were testing you, Gary, to make sure you're listening.
I'm awake.
That's all it was. Yeah, so Joe just was wondering, maybe where, Janet, where your shop is, and you have an online presence there. Our listeners can tune in and find you.
Sure. Yes. So as you mentioned, I'm just outside of Newmarket. I'm just like north end of Newmarket, a kilometer outside of town. And I have a website. It's just countrycutflowers.ca. I am most active on Instagram. It's a great vehicle for flower pictures. And there my handle's at Country Cut Flowers. And I'm also on Facebook, also at Country Cut Flowers. So pretty easy to find. I guess I claimed that name before anyone else.
Nice.
Yeah. That is good. Now, would you mind telling us, you've got a few services that or a few programs, let's say, for lack of a better term, how you manage things at Country Cut Flowers?
Yeah. So the main thing we have that we really focus on are these Cut Your Own Flower Days. And as I mentioned, they'll start in May with the tulips, June with the peonies. Then come late July, we reopen until frost. And that's when we have the mixed perennial and annual gardens around our barn, and then a field with annuals. And we'll open up multiple days a week for Cut Your Own Flowers then. We also run a variety of workshops, either out in the lawn beside the field or in our barn. We have a 150-year-old barn, and it's a beautiful spot. So we have a little bit in the way of flower arranging. We have a local celebrity, Antonio Valente of Antonio Valente Flowers, comes out a couple of times a year to lead sessions in flower arranging. I have a plan this year as well to include some workshops that are a little simpler, just doing mason jar arrangements. We have local artisans. A friend of mine does botanical silk dyeing. So with her workshop, we'll come out, gather some flowers, even dried petals that have fallen on the ground, roll them up into silks, go through the whole process of botanical dyeing. Another friend of mine does yoga and art, and with that, we cut a bouquet of flowers, do the artwork around whatever flowers have been gathered, and some yoga. We're going to be doing some flower pressing this summer and a bunch of projects that involve pressed flowers. So we try to have quite a variety of workshops throughout the season.
Wonderful. Those all sound wonderful.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, they're fun. I make sure I only bring workshops here that I'm really interested in. So hopefully others find them interesting. Yeah.
And how many people can attend a workshop roughly?
Yeah, so we try to keep them pretty tight, especially with something like botanical dyeing, because everyone needs a whole table to themselves. So it's really anywhere from a small class would have about 10 people up to maximum size would be 20. So they're nice, small, intimate groups. Yep.
And how often are the events? Are they like monthly? Do they go all season? Are they on specific days, like weekends versus weekdays?
Yeah, so the workshops are primarily on Sunday mornings throughout the summer. So we'll start a couple in June, and then throughout July, August, September, on most Sunday mornings, we will have a workshop.
Nice.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Okay.
So book your Sunday mornings, everyone.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Definitely.
It's a nice, quiet time on the farm. And we don't have cut-your-own flowers going on at the same time, so it's really private. That's all that's going on the farm at that time.
Oh, good. So there's nobody can cut their own at the same time. Okay.
Yeah.
That really adds to the experience, I would feel.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's really one of my guiding principles here. I like to make sure things are peaceful. It's all about connection to the earth and creativity. So I hope it's providing a nice experience for people.
Yeah. I mean, I just think it's, when you said that when we talked earlier and you mentioned about people coming and cutting their own, and I picture, the chaos from, growing up as a child at a strawberry picking. Like, that's chaos. And I'm like, how do you manage it with now these are that's before Instagram, right? So now, how do you manage that? So I think your solution of making an event and having people pre-purchase tickets is just brilliant.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, it was a real saving grace because it was just over 2 years ago, we were featured on Blog TO one Saturday morning.
Oh.
And wonderful local writer who had featured us because she had bought flowers from me at the local farmers market when we used to sell there and saw that we were doing Cut Your Own. So it was so kind of her to feature us. But we also had all of Toronto descend on our farm. So we had to close for a couple of weeks, block the driveway, remove the barricade anytime we wanted to get out of the driveway.
No.
There were often cars parked out there ready to ask questions. So we reevaluated over those 2 weeks and discovered that Eventbrite was, and there's all kinds of ticketing platforms out there. It was just the one I found right off the bat. And it was a real saving grace. So
that's wonderful. So that's important for our listeners to know. So definitely visit your website, and they can purchase the tickets there when they're ready. Once we know your open dates and things like that, right? There's no dropping in. There's no going by and checking out to see if you're open. That it is a ticketed entry. Yes. And unfortunately, I do cringe a little when I turn people away, but I sell a certain number of tickets to make sure there's the right supply of flowers on any given day as well. Because the season varies. Like,
Late July, there's tons of flowers out there, but there may not be a whole lot of dahlias yet. They're just starting to get going. So I make sure I don't sell quite as many tickets then. And I always alert the customers too, if you're a huge dahlia fan, don't come at the end of July. Come at the end of August so that people are aware of what's growing when.
Okay. And you also have a subscription service.
Yes. So for people, and it's generally local people, but I certainly get people from further afield buying this one, where you can fill up 3 buckets full of flowers throughout the growing season. So that's a real popular one, and it does sell out. It always sells out by Mother's Day. Cool. And that's one where we can be really flexible, because I get to know these people over the season. So if they want to come on a Monday morning and fill their bucket while I'm out there weeding, that's totally fine. So, or they want to come on a Friday night, that's fine. So, so you can really fill a bucket. Oh my gosh, you can probably get 75 flowers in there, depending what you're picking. Right. So it's those people who either want to share with people on their street, or they want flowers in every room in their house. And that's by far the most popular one. But then there's also subscriptions where you can pick up a mason jar of flowers every Friday. So for the people who maybe don't want to come out and cut their own, and they'll pop by on their way home from work on a Friday and grab their mason jar of flowers. So we do that through July, August, and September as well.
Okay. To clarify the bucket, so you're basically someone's purchasing that subscription, and that entitles them to 3 buckets. So you know when they've been there their third time, kind of thing, because like you said, you get to know everybody.
Yes, exactly. And I do just ask, just give me a heads up when you're coming, so I know, because once in a while there is something else going on. We have started hosting small weddings here, so I don't really want my flower picking customers to come in the middle of a wedding. I don't think they want to either.
No, for sure.
No. Yeah, so at the start of the season, I give each of those customers their bucket so that they just reuse it throughout the season, and then it's their bucket to keep at the end of the season.
Oh, okay. That's great. And that will be available on your website as well.
Yes, it's on the website now. I know there aren't a whole lot of those left, but there are a few still left. I've noticed over the last couple of weeks they've been selling.
Oh, okay. And so you purposely book them for a month? Like I see on there, July. Is that what I'm looking? Am I looking at the right things?
Yeah. So those are the Friday mason jars. Those are the ones broken down by July, August, and September.
Okay.
It's probably called Season of Flowers or Buckets. I should know what it's called, but
flowers through the 2020 season.
Yeah.
Is that it? Okay. That's very neat. All right. Well, that is excellent. And are you excited? Like, it must be a little challenging now. I'm sure that you are doing all this hard work on starting all these seeds and getting everything ready with a few unknowns. But I think that's what farming is, right? Because we've had years where there was still snow on the ground.
Yeah, exactly. If anything, we're seeing a slightly earlier, warmer spring. So, like just last year, it was very cold and it was very wet. So there was a big portion of my field I couldn't even plant until late June, early July. So you're right. Being a farmer really means embracing the unknowns. So I feel like there's going to be a way, one way or another, to get through the season, and we'll pivot. We'll change up how we're doing things if we have to. I do feel hopeful. Yeah, I mean, it's hard not to feel hopeful when you see little seedlings sprouting in the winter. Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Well, another hour has flown by.
I know. Where does the time go?
That's right. We have a couple people. Juanita has written in. Hi, everyone. Wow. Loving the advice. Thank you for the show. And Ken is also written in. Hi, I just love your guest slogan, Earth laughs in flowers. Brilliant. From Ken.
Oh, thank you. Well, that wasn't me, but yes.
But
it's a quote I love.
one other person, Madden, has just written in. Hi, do you deliver for your weekly packages, or is it pickup only? Thank you.
Well, it has. I had switched to pickup only this summer, but in light of current circumstances, if we're not allowed to have people gathering here in the summer, then I will deliver, most definitely.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's good to know. It's nice that you're nimble enough that you can, again, I think it goes back to the whole farmer mentality. They have to be. But I think you've set yourself up in such a great way, Janet, that you can kind of pivot and really accommodate people, with the flowers.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I think it's essential. And you know what? I think people are doing that across the board, no matter what business they're in right now. I see people pivoting and changing and accommodating. It's really inspiring to see.
Yeah,
it is.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. I just wanted to go back for a second to the peonies. You said you had 1,000 peony plants, and you let people cut their own peonies.
Yes.
Is that scary?
Well, I started doing it a little bit last year, and it was a little scary, I do have to say, but I find the vast majority of people are so respectful, and it does go back to having very small numbers in the field at any given time. So I can actually show people on the plant where to cut and how many to cut on any given plant so that they're not over harvesting on one plant and maybe hurting that one. So it's fine. I really do find most people are really wonderful. And if anything, they're scared to make that first cut. So I know when someone's scared to make a cut, they're going to be just fine in the field.
Yeah. And you obviously are not a one-woman show. You must have staff that supports you and that helps your customers as well.
Yes. So last summer, for the first time, I had a full-time university student from May to the end of August, and that was hugely helpful. But then I'll also have a couple of high school students here part-time. A couple of moms come and help out part-time too, just with, whatever hours work for them. And that's immensely helpful. My husband does help on occasion as well. He loves it, but he is busy, so I know I can't draw on him too often.
Right.
But he is a great help as well. And my children, once in a while, I can rope them into it.
Yes, that is tricky, right? When they've grown up with it, isn't it? It's much harder, isn't it?
Yeah, none of my 3 children are particularly inspired by flowers at this point. I keep hoping one day they'll come around.
Yes. Oh, that is wonderful. So once again, your website is countrycutflowers.ca.
Yes.
And our listeners can find you at Country Cut Flowers both on Facebook and on Instagram.
That is right.
Excellent. Is there anything else that you any other growing from flowers from seed wisdom that you'd like to end with?
Oh, my goodness. Oh, I know what. Don't be afraid to fail.
Ooh.
If something doesn't grow, because I have to say, I have had plenty of trays of plants over the years where I scratch my head and I wonder, did I actually plant something in here? Because nothing has come up. So please don't be frustrated. Just maybe move it to a different location. See if maybe a sunnier window will help you out, or a warmer spot, or maybe that tray just didn't work out. Try it again. Try different flowers. I think that's half the fun, experimenting and seeing what works.
Oh, what a great tip.
Well, certainly. Yes, and what a great tip.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Matthew, do we have any other questions?
No, I think we've gotten through all of them.
I'm sure our listeners have figured out that we're no longer in the studio together since we've been doing the social distancing. So hopefully everybody can hear us all right. We are both in our own home, so everybody's in their own home, and Gary's managing it all, right, Gary, from the studio, doing an amazing job.
Yep, and he is doing an amazing job. And just as we actually about to sign off here, Ralph does write in. This is such a fantastic concept. Usually we just buy our fresh cut flowers from a store. Looking forward to trying it out. So there's a new customer for you, Ralph.
Yeah.
Janet, it's Ralph.
Yeah, I think it's really shout out to all the local flower farmers. And I know there's a lot of listeners from all over Canada and the U.S. There are flower farmers near them, right, Janet? They're all over.
Yes,
I think
exactly. Yeah. There's flower farmers everywhere now. It's really easy. Just do a little Google search and you will find them. They're quite abundant now, and even a lot of local florists will carry local flowers. So you can even ask your local florist about that as well. Mm-hmm. It'll encourage them to really buy from the local growers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's true. Because we saw that with the vegetables, right? When we started, the consumers started asking for Ontario garlic and asking for Ontario produce. You know, it really, the grocery stores did come around. So I think our flower shops will do the same thing.
Definitely. And there are a lot of florists who have already started buying from the local growers. So it's wonderful to see that.
Wonderful. And did you want to give a shout out? I know you briefly mentioned weddings. Did you want to give a shout out to any of the weddings? I know lots to be determined still with that.
Right. Yes. So, we do host really small weddings here. We stick to 30 guests or fewer, and which, in light of current circumstances, the smaller groups, once we get going again, may be what we're allowed to do. So, we have booked a few weddings this summer, but they're all, in a little bit of a holding pattern. We're waiting and seeing, but August and September are a lovely time to get married beside a full flower field. So, wow. It's it's a nice alternative from going to City Hall. It's a little more personal. You're outdoors, and if it rains, we have our old barn as a backup. So, people seem to be loving that rustic, out in the country feel for their weddings.
Oh, wonderful idea.
Yeah. Oh, and you mentioned shout out. One other thing with buying seeds for your flowers. I would also recommend trying to find local to you flower seed suppliers, because we all have seed companies somewhat close by within our provinces or states or wherever you're located. I know in Ontario here, we have a few great seed companies.
That's right. And I think that people are so keen to try this lately in the last few weeks with what's been going on is some of the seed suppliers have been reporting that they are, getting a little backlogged. But I think that's okay, especially if you're ordering seeds that you want to then direct sow, you still have time, right?
Yes, there's nothing to panic over. And even if you plant something that maybe needed a little bit of a head start, like snapdragons, because I've started all my snapdragons indoors already. But if you end up direct seeding them in June, you'll just likely get a fall crop instead of an early summer crop. So all is not lost.
Excellent. But that is a great thing to also support local seed companies.
Yes, most definitely.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Janet. I'm just a huge shout out to you, and thank you for joining us here and bringing some color and flower inspiration to people's lives right now.
Oh, well, thank you so much for including me this evening. I really appreciate it. It's been really nice chatting with you, too.
Yeah, it's been chatting with you, too. So we'll talk to you soon.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, bye for now.
Thank you, Janet.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Wow, well, Matthew, that was a great show. I mean, I can't believe we haven't talked about growing flowers before and doing a cutting garden, but I think it's definitely something that everybody can really draw some joy and comfort from planning right now.
That's right. It sounds like it's a lot easier than we think it is. And there's Country Cut Flowers, which is a great resource, this podcast for sure, for those who you know who might want to start one this season. So jump right in.
Yeah, and I think tubers, we talked a bit about seeds, but we didn't really talk a lot about tubers. But I think a lot of those same seed companies will have tubers of flowers like dahlias and gladiolas and ranunculus, different things like that we still have time to plant also.
Indeed, yeah. We're just starting to do some of our indoor bulb planting for those spring, summer bulbs for sure.
Yeah, so that's great. That's great. And boy, we covered a lot of growing in our month of growing, didn't we?
We did. I think over the last month we've got everyone started. I think they should all be have a great start and find some brand new success this year. Hopefully that is the case for everybody.
That's right. And we hope to continue doing the show even in our little isolation as long as we can do it, right, Gary?
I hope so.
Next month, Matt, what are we going to talk about for April?
It's the month you've all been waiting for. We're talking about lawn care.
Ooh.
So get your lawn care questions ready. We've got 3 big packed shows that we're going to talk about all about lawn care. And with some guests in there too. So.
Okay. And on that note, I do want to let people know that it is still too early. I know because we're home and we're puttering around our yards, and I've seen some posts on Facebook about people concerned about the state of their lawn and what should they be doing. But really, it's still too early.
Should be
soil
staying
temperatures.
inside.
Yeah, we shouldn't be walking on the lawns. We shouldn't be raking them, unless you happen to have like a really dry, I don't know. I just don't think, especially with the rain in the last few days. So it still is too early. So there's nothing wrong with your lawn. It's just that's the way the lawn looks like. Usually there's snow on top of it, right? So have everybody stay tuned, and we'll talk more about it next week on our first episode in April. But please not to worry, so not worry about their grass, right?
You got it. Don't forget to check out our Down the Garden Path on all your favorite podcast apps. Like, share, hit subscribe. Leave us a comment. We would love to hear from you. Just search Down the Garden Path on all your favorite podcasts. Thank you, Gloria, James, Joe, Juanita, Ken, Madden, and Ralph for writing in this evening and joining us here live Down the Garden Path. And we hope that you all tune in next week as we start our month on lawn care here on Down the Garden Path. Anything else from you, Joanne?
No, I think we're great. I mean, I'm glad that we were able to still do it, and it works. And we can still bring, because we've gotten such great feedback from our listeners that this is something that they look forward to kind of break up their week at home and give them something to look forward to. So everyone, please stay safe. Please keep social distancing, and we can all work together wherever you are to, what do they say, plank the curve, right?
That's it, flatten that curve.
Mm-hmm.
Well then, until next week, thank you everybody for tuning in. Thank you to our guest Janet, and we'll see you next week, same time here on Reality Radio 101 on Down the Garden Path here on Reality Radio 101. Have a good evening.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to Down the Garden Path with your hosts Joanne Shaw and Matthew Dressing, right here on Reality Radio 101.